Hey guys, how's it going? Kripparrian here. Yesterday we had a pretty interesting question posed by my good friend Ixar at Blizzard. He's the lead balance designer, and through Twitter he posted this. If Hearthstone used to be your main game but isn't anymore, what would get you back? And it actually got a lot of traction, so I wanted to go over some of the replies, give you guys a little bit of my input. Obviously, this question doesn't apply to me very well because, well, I play Hearthstone as my main game. I think Hearthstone, at least the part that I play, is pretty good, but I actually quite acknowledge that a lot of the other parts are not very good. I don't consider Standard to be, in general, well-structured in terms of daily play environment for at least hardcore gamers, let's say. Arena, I feel, is pretty good, has been very good, and certainly has been getting the attention that it deserved in the last few months with the new bucket systems that are put in such a way that, well, I'm quite happy at least. But of course, not everyone is, so let's see what people have to say. Obviously, some of these are pretty troll replies. Pre-nerf Natpagal, pre-nerf Tinkmaster Overspark. That'll get him back, apparently. Maybe it's been a while for this individual. Dan's Gaming replied, more game modes would be great. Some other card games have some really fun permanent modes with different rules similar to Tavern Brawl. Would be nice to have several Tavern Brawls overlapping at once. So yes, he's definitely right about that. There isn't enough PvE content. I would say that there is actually quite a lot of PvE content, but it doesn't have like any real replayability. I've beat all the different adventure modes on every difficulty using every character, and on some nights I just feel like chilling out. Maybe I feel like doing like a dungeon run or something, but it's pretty off. I don't play Hearthstone because of repeat dungeon runs. So he's certainly right about that there isn't enough compelling replayability in the PvE content, and certainly a lot of people who play Blizzard games really love that part about it. Rotate the classic set. We'll see this quite a bit in the replies. Personally, I don't really agree with just rotating the classic set really being very meaningful, though any change to the game would be welcome in my mind, specifically to standard mode. Tournament mode with bans. I guess people want to play Hearthstone more competitively in the standard environment. I don't particularly agree with that either, but again, you will see it repeated a lot, so maybe it is what a lot of people want to see. More play modes in general. That's interesting because I think people don't actually play a lot of Tavern Brawl. I think in general people don't play Arena very much, yet at least Arena is quite exquisitely designed in its current state. So I think people should maybe try these play modes again. Ladder. They want more play modes, but they want to play ladder. Yeah. It's a bit of a tough one. In the end, I feel like people typically do play one main game mode. Alright. Really enjoy the game, but in the past, I felt like a lot of games were more about summation of a lot of small decisions rather than a few big occurrences. Old value-based control mirror that went to fatigue. So that's one of the things that got pretty butchered over the years. The fatigue game plan, it started with like Jade Druid, because my favorite deck at the time was Fatigue Druid. And there's no point in playing that deck when you just play Jades. And then, why would you play mid-range Druid? Why would you play Control Druid? Why would you play Combo Druid? These kind of one-dimensional archetypes kind of took hold over the game, and some of the corners that were really cool to play just kind of stopped existing. So right now he's certainly right. There's not a whole lot of value-based control mirrors, that kind of stuff. Speed arenas, I would love that, but I'm not so sure the majority of Hearthstone players would like that, so I understand if they never implement such a feature. The reason I don't play anymore is the exhausting ladder grind, but first and foremost, lack of tournament mode. Okay, sure, tournament mode. I think a lot of people have like a very idealistic form of a feature that they want to see, but this is often not what you're going to get when you're preaching for like a specific mode and just labeling it under like one category. Like is really, if you really just want to play against other people competitively, you just find some competitive friends and play through the direct play feature, right? Obviously that's not what they're asking for, but really what I'm trying to get at is we actually have a really crappy tournament mode already. It's really crappy, but, I think if people want tournament mode or any one feature, I think it's very valuable to actually talk about the details of what they want rather than labeling it as something that's really not very well defined. Trump wants 4 expansions instead of 3 a year. Sure, I'd also like 5 and 6 and 7. Why not once a month? It's obviously more content is better content. I think the core of what he's saying with this statement is that we want updates more frequently. We want card releases more frequently. And I think that is actually a really big thing. I think that certainly would rekindle my interest in ranked mode on a monthly basis if we just had new cards being released or being available or something in terms of cards on a regular basis. I don't think it has to be in the form of expansions, but new cards all the time I think would be awesome for the game. Can you rap? Sadly, not as well as Ben Brode. Actually, just not really at all. RIP. This gentleman here wants aggro shaman once again. He wants his 2-mana flame tongue totem. People really like kind of a stylistic type of play and they kind of stick to it. So it's interesting to see all the different things that people miss. I certainly do not miss aggro shaman, by the way. Ladder being relevant somehow. Yep. That's true. I feel like ladder, after we just explore all the new cards, which takes like 2 to 4 weeks each expansion, there's like no reason to really play a ladder. I mean, for me, I don't really care that much because I play arena, and arena is pretty good year round. More balance patches, keeping the game fresh. I absolutely agree with this. I think balance patches don't actually have to really balance the game very well. They just have to change the game on a regular basis. There has to be newness in the game on a regular basis. Replay mode and stats, that could be interesting. There's just so much stats out there. I don't know if that's really worth their time. Achievements. Oh man, I would love achievements. Achievements would add replayability to a lot of content. You can push people to come up with like crazy decks in Constructed. You can push people to have replayability in the actually vast amount of PvE content they have. Hearthstone has a lot of PvE content. There's just no reason to play it a second time. Certainly not on a regular basis. Sure. I found this post pretty interesting. I just skimmed through this earlier, but this one I really found quite interesting from Peter Zalud here. So this will be a long post. Basically, everything developers do are 30 minutes of content or less every week, or a new expansion and a nerf. You're adding nothing to the game for players like me, which have 300,000 dust and 80% golden collection with all card backs. When I start the client, I have nothing to do. Ladder is mostly the same for the last 5 years. Collecting new cards is also the same, and PvE content can be finished in a matter of minutes, mostly days. I love to collect things and have things to do. Getting 500 wins on every hero used to be a challenge when it was 3 years ago. Same with all the skins. What could take me back is something which takes months to get, like a new card art, new skins that can be completed in insane circumstances and achievements. When you look at League of Legends and World of Warcraft, they get it mostly right. There's something for every player, but in Hearthstone, there's nothing for the hardcore player like me. I don't have to buy the next expansion to have all the golden cards on launch. So I think he's exactly right. I think Hearthstone doesn't attract like the very hardcore player who plays like many hours a day. And certainly because the game is so largely judged on the constructed experience, on the ladder standard experience, that part he's right. I think it's pretty shallow. I mean, I've always said that. It's definitely quite shallow. Having a hardcore aspect of the game, I think would be really cool. It certainly wasn't the design of Hearthstone for it to be like a very hardcore game. But you have to think about it. Hearthstone is a mature game. Like, it's been out there for over 5 years now. We're actually closing in on 6 years right now. We're about the 5.5 point. The people that are playing Hearthstone right now, there are people who actually treat it quite seriously. They actually do. There are completionists. You know, they're in this because they really care about everything that they do in the game, and they want more. So having these like long-term, very insanely, you know, difficult challenges, achievements, circumstances, as he puts it, anything like that, I think would appeal to the current base heavily. And obviously some of the, you know, it's obviously he's still playing Hearthstone. The question is if it's not your main game. So it's not his main game because he wants to put a lot more time in the Hearthstone, but doesn't really see the value in doing that. So he wants something he can sink his time into. And certainly I would love that. And I imagine a lot of players who are playing right now would love that as well. More Yogg. Well, you can always play Yogg. It's in Wild. It's got 307 likes. That's pretty hilarious. Cute doggas. Sure. A mode in which all classic cards were back in the game and returned to their original state on release. I miss Combo Druid, Zoo, Freeze Mage, Control Warrior, Miracle Rogue, and Oil Rogue. I feel like this is actually a pretty interesting suggestion. Certainly, I often regard the classic version of Hearthstone as one of the best times in Hearthstone. I think that was largely because it was very well designed and very well balanced, but also we didn't have the information networks, the statistics that we have these days. A lot of players were playing on their own experience. Basically, they were playing blind. So I feel like if we went back to the classic set, people would very quickly figure it out. People would figure out what the best deck is. People would figure out what the best cards are, and they would just play those. So while I certainly would want to experience Tyler's suggestion, I think it's probably better suited as like a month-long event. And maybe next month there would be another event. You know, something like that, I think, is a more practical implementation of his suggestion. Open decklist formats are much more fun than closed decklist formats. Sure, okay. Tournament mode. Again, I think if you're saying tournament mode, you have to be specific about what you want. We have a really crappy version of tournament mode already. Something done about Gen and Baku. Well, I think actually it is going to be a lot done about Gen and Baku in the upcoming expansion that's going to knock out 3 sets from 2017. All the Gen and Baku decks have 30-40% cards from those sets. So they're going to be very different. More Flame Tongue. I'm surprised to see people missing Flame Tongue. Tournament mode. Benbrode. Warsong Commander. Okay, here we go. To elaborate, Patron, Miracle Rogue, Force of Nature Druid, Freeze Mage had an exciting dynamic where a lot of their deck was both win condition and survival tool. I miss that. Mecha'thun decks have an easier time managing resources because their combo reads win the game. Yeah, I think that's a very good suggestion. I actually really love combo decks in Hearthstone, but I do feel like combo decks are far too defined as combo decks these days. Mecha'thun is a great example. With Mecha'thun, you just win the game. It doesn't do a certain amount of damage even, which is kind of like the next easiest thing to do. With Miracle Rogue, you had to manage your resources. If you had to stay alive and used your combo pieces, which were essentially like eviscerates or something like that, that would eventually get buffed through spell damage with Malygos, if you used those defensively to stay alive, then your combo sucked. So kind of going half-saves on the combo to stay alive in the early game was actually a really cool play dynamic that a lot of combo decks don't have these days. And, you know, some people might like that or not, but I think it's certainly more satisfying to pull off a combo. It's more satisfying to get like the Dream Miracle Rogue combo because you manage to get there without expending the resources from your combo. You know, if you just manage to get a Mecha'thun off, it's the same Mecha'thun every time, all the time. That's kind of loses its excitement. Still my main game, play less than I used to. There needs to be something aside from Battle of One and Arena for people who have achieved their goals in both, either draft mode or best of 3, and a climb go a long way. So kind of like, you know, a more specific version of a competitive format. I think a reply like this is to be taken more seriously in terms of implementation rather than just someone saying tournament mode. Like, you know, what do you want out of tournament mode? That's probably the most common suggestion in this tweet. what is tournament mode to you? Now, to him, he wants a draft mode or a best of 3 within the client. So that is something they can structure a mode around, for example. So I like the formatting of this suggestion. The game being fit for the competitive experience, core skills like tempo and value should matter. Heavy impact combos should be reserved for memes alone. So very similar to the previous suggestion. Fun and rewarding way to spend my time playing the game. Ladder is no longer rewarding. I'm surprised that a lot of people talk about this point because on a personal level, sure, I probably played Hearthstone a lot more than most of you guys, a lot more than most of the people replying to this tweet. But ladder was never really rewarding for me. I play ladder to kind of explore decks, explore cards, just see kind of the cool craziness that could happen. And that was it. I never really had a high expectation. There was never a time where an expansion came out and I'd be like, oh my god, I'm so excited to play ladder for the next 4 months. Every time an expansion would come out, I would have the exact same expectation. I would expect to play ladder for 2 to 4 weeks while I experience the new cards and new decks, have a lot of fun doing that, and then go to arena, take that knowledge and learn what happens in this expansion in arena mode and play it quite competitively, every arena run, every game being dynamic. Every time I have no idea what's in my opponent's deck, and all the time I'm trying to figure out, based on his plays, what he has in his hand. Right? So that's the game that I play. I feel like ladder is maybe just too simplistic for a 5.5-year-old game. That could be the main issue. Ex-Hearthstone player, the game felt like changing in a way. New stuff is always replacing the old stuff. I like a game with change is like an evolvement, bringing a fresh feel to the game, but not placing the oldies into the dumpster. That's kind of true, but at the same time, in Hearthstone, you don't have that many cards in your deck. But I think what he's getting at is certainly true. I think up until maybe this last expansion, maybe the last 2, maybe the last 3 expansions, there was always the intent from the development that there would be some power creep over the last few sets, over the last few years. I think they're going a bit backwards on that now. I think now we see them nerfing the classic set a lot more. I don't think they're doing that just for the fun of it. That, combined with the fact that the last 2 or 3 expansions have nearly no playable cards in standard, suggests to me that the development structure for Hearthstone has changed to one where they want to set up the rules so they can play it out for the long term. So I think this might actually receive a solution, so pay attention to the game. All right, let's do one more here. Rotate the entire classic set. Unnerf all the cards that were problematic due to the classic set enabling them. Print larger sets. Tournament mode. MMR transparency. Actually, MMR transparency sounds pretty cool. I would like to see that. Test cards before you print them. I'm not so sure that they don't test them. I probably still wouldn't play again. LMAO. Oh, okay. Maybe that wasn't a great one to end on. But yeah, there's a lot of frustrations that are isolated under largely standard play, largely under giving a more rich experience to the player who's interested in playing Hearthstone as their main game all the time. And there's so many, there's literally over 1,000 replies to this tweet. So I'm kind of curious to see what direction this actually goes into. We have seen the Blizzard Hearthstone development team behaving differently in the last year or so in Hearthstone, and I think with more change kind of recently, with balance changes more frequently, with balance changes happening overnight, the complete restructuring of arena mode, and now it seems like they're, opening their ears to an even wider public who may not even be too interested in playing the game. So let me know what you think. If you want to see more of these replies, I'll put the tweet directly in the description, so check that out. Hope you enjoyed my feedback, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.